I've just put together a quick little tier list of how I thought I would rank everyone in the National League North's season, and starting off with AFC Fylde, who you've just got to admit they did deserve the league. It was close between them and South Shields, but in the end they just had that too much quality where they would get them results over the line, and they are the only team in the S tier. Then moving down now to the A tier, where you have South Shields, who have become full time and got that proper investment in the team. Got players like Kedwin Scott, Canes like Sean McGurk, players all like that who have made a real big impact this season, and got them a second pushing the last day at the title, but unfortunately couldn't get over the line. But then it'll probably go up to an S if they do win the playoffs. Next up, I've got Merthyr Town, who they would have definitely been S tier before they lost Ricardo Reese and Cole Jarvis. However, they fell off a bit and just were outside of the playoffs, and then they couldn't get there in the end. But then still, great season from them, and they'll probably just be looking to push up and get that playoffs next year. Then Macclesfield, you knew it was going to happen with the quality of players that they had, making that step up, even though they did go through a lot of trouble, losing a lot of players and their manager. But once again, a really good team for them as they finished in fourth. Then Scarborough finishing in the playoffs against all odds, losing quite a few players and then having to switch over to Bridlington, which wasn't a very good pitch at all, and then having a lot of injuries during the season, which was always going to be tough for them, and then being able to just get them results over the line, amazing from them. And then the final one I've gone for in 80 is Bedford Town, who were outstanding this season, as they were one of the favourites for relegation, and coming into a league where they had to do a lot of travelling on a part-time basis. Lee Bertram did an amazing job, especially with the help of Tyrone Marsh, who was just scoring goals all the time for Bedford as they stayed up, which is amazing for a club like them. Then quickly go through B, as there's quite a few teams there. Kidderminster finishing third, however I feel like they would have been like to have been in the title race and play a part in it, even though obviously really good finishing third, but I feel like they would have been like to be a bit more involved. Same with Chester, who could have easily been in D tier if Conor Rawlinson didn't come in for Callum McIntyre. But yeah, Chester saving their season in the end. Then Downton could have easily been A tier if they'd finished in the playoffs, but they just couldn't get it over the line. The Marine finishing the highest they've ever finished in the National League North, becoming a mid-table team, getting some big results and reaching that FA Trophy semi-final. Then Worksop coming up once again, putting some really good performances, including that 8-0 against Peterborough Sport, and getting a good solid mid-table finish. And then Buxton, full-time team. They were a bit shaky in the middle of the season, but just their running was unbelievable at the end of the season. So that gets them in the BT and in the playoffs. Then Telford getting a good solid just outside the playoffs as they made their return to the National League North, putting in some really good performances, even including an 8-0 win against Curzon Ashton, and just a solid all-round performance from them. Moving down now to C tier with Radcliffe, who once again were looking really good for the playoffs, but just February onwards they just capitulated and couldn't really get a good run of form together, and ended up finishing 14th, which, to be fair to them, is their highest finish in the National League North, but from where they were, it's not the greatest. And then Southport start the season off really poorly, were bottom of the league, but then they were able to get their form together with players like Chrissy really stepping up and being able to help them to survive the drop and become mid-table again. Then Spennymoor, who people were saying could have got playoffs at the start of the season, but then once again they just shipped too many goals, and in the end Graham Lee, his time was up, but then Tommy Miller and Dolan had to get the lads together and give them a bit of a push on, which they did pose a late playoff charge, but just couldn't get it over the line. Then D tier now, Chorley, who have been playoffs for quite a few years now, but they just couldn't get a good run, and losing quite a few key players, like it just didn't really fit for them this season. It was just couldn't get a good run of form at all, with a lot of draws. To be fair, the home form was still really good, but away it just wasn't good enough. And then Oxford City, leaving it to the last day to stay up, but they they certainly had a better chance than more the rest of the teams down there, and putting some really good performances, especially at the end of the season when they became full time, and that really saved their season. ET now, Kingsland Town, who had quite a lot of funding, but they just couldn't put much to use, especially ruining players like Michael Giassi. But then he had a fallout with the management, I believe, and it just wasn't good for them at all. And once again, just results weren't going their way. But Paul Caddis and Adam Rooney came in and saved them at the last hour. Then the same with Hereford, as Caddis and Rooney left, Aaron Downs came in and did the magic there, and once again saved them at the last hour. Then the relegation teams, Curzon Ashton was definitely a really big surprise considering where they finished last season, but it just wasn't good enough. Poor run of form in the second half of the season, and it just was curtains for them. Then Peterborough Sports, they were always going to struggle with not much money in the club, low attendances. It was always going to be a struggle getting them players in. Then Leamington, they just couldn't score many goals. At the back, they weren't too bad. However, it just wasn't meant to be. And then Alfreton, who, once again, were pushing for the playoffs in the past couple of seasons, it didn't start very well with Billy Heath, who had to get sacked. And then, in the end, Jakes Buxton just couldn't do enough to save them.